The Rock officially turns heel on the city of Utah. SmackDown gets its newest signing. And the men's elimination chamber gets its final two qualifiers. All that and more on Let's Talk Wrestling. Welcome to Let's Talk Wrestling, the pro wrestling portion of the Let's Talk Gratitude channel. My name is Christian. I hope you all have had a wonderful weekend this week. We were treated to a great episode of SmackDown, one full of great matches all around, and one massive segment. So I think we should start right there, the massive segment, the most important part of the show, the Bloodline. Starts off with Roman Reigns arriving to the arena with Paul Heyman. Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa are waiting for Roman Reigns in the loading bay. Roman gives an uncharacteristic cheery hug to Jimmy Uso. Big ol' smile on Roman's face. Looks way too comfortable, way too chummy, way too happy with himself. And for good reason. Roman comes out to the ring and says to the crowd, calls Salt Lake City, Utah, a bunch of idiots, says that tonight is history because The Rock is officially a member of the Bloodline. More interesting of what Roman Reigns says is that he tells the crowd why they're idiots. He says, because everything we say has meaning. Everything we say is information that you need to understand. So, why is this interesting? Because it's one of those storytelling devices where if the story's telling you, hey, this is super important, hey, remember this, you should probably take note of it, you should probably take it at its word, right? If Roman Reigns is telling you that everything they're going to be saying going forward has meaning to it, has a purpose, has a plan to it, take him at his word. Afterwards, after he welcomes The Rock to the arena, The Rock comes down to the ring in what I can only assume is probably a $500 to $1,000 shirt. Looks really nice, reminiscent of the old $500 shirt that The Rock was wearing when he was first originally a heel. The Rock also wearing sunglasses that he will not take off this entire segment. And we can basically just say, welcome back, corporate heel Rock. And just absolutely starts off hot, starts off on a tear on this crowd. He comes out, swerves the crowd by saying, Utah, you guys broke a record, indoor attendance record for the state of Utah. And he says, the record you guys broke was having the largest gathering of trailer park trash that The Rock has ever seen. Drops the mic on the crowd, goes on to call the crowd meaningless, calls them inbreds, calls them fat, herpes-infested idiots. So just absolutely tears this crowd apart. And what's interesting about this promo segment, the entire time that The Rock is talking, Roman Reigns is standing on the side of the on one side of the ring, looking exactly like the guys who follow him. Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman. While The Rock's talking this entire time, Roman Reigns looks exactly like Jimmy Uso, looks exactly like Solo Sikoa, a follower. Roman Reigns looks like a follower for what I can only assume is the real leader of this group, The Rock. The biggest star of this group, The Rock. Of course, the difference between Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns is that Roman Reigns is the only one in this entire ring holding a championship. So, interesting to see how that plays itself out going forward. The Rock asks the crowd, what's Cody's story? And then goes on to say that Cody's story, like the 49ers, like the Utah Jazz against Michael Jordan, which just turned the knife into that Utah crowd. The Rock says that Cody's story, like those two teams, is to be a loser. That you don't just get to lose to Roman Reigns and ask for another shot the year after. You got to take your lumps like a man and move on. Move past this. The Rock then says that he's going to do everything in his power to ensure that Cody Rhodes loses, walks out a loser at WrestleMania. And I like this because the internet already has been doing its detective work and sleuthing a bit. And because we're taking Roman Reigns at his word and saying everything these guys do matters, everything everything they say counts, everything they do counts, When you watched if you watched it on TV, when The Rock points at what seems like the camera and says, I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that you lose, the camera angle changes and makes it look like The Rock is actually not pointing at the camera, but looking like he's pointing at Roman Reigns. And of course you can ask yourself, like, well, is this intentional? That depends. Is Roman Reigns saying that everything we do counts intentional? Certainly feels like that. So, interesting play with the camera angles. Interesting subtle storytelling. And interesting to see how that plays out forward. Rock ends the segment by saying, if you smell what the Bloodline's cooking, Roman Reigns and the Bloodline guys, Solo, Jimmy, and Paul Heyman all throw up their ones, and The Rock, interestingly, and this could just be how his hand works, but interestingly, throws up an L instead. Could it mean, some people have surmised that it means leader, some people it means that it's the loser symbol. He's throwing up an L for the Bloodline because The Rock might turn on the Bloodline somewhere down the line. Possible. All interesting possibilities, and that's what I think I love most about what we're doing for this WrestleMania, is that there's just so much storytelling that we don't know. There's so many twists and turns on this journey with Cody Rhodes, with the Bloodline, with The Rock, that we don't know, right? We can all make our guesses and all make our fantasy bookings, and that's all fun. That's all part of the ride that makes this enjoyable. But we have no idea what's going to happen next, and that's what's exciting, right? This could all just be incidental, right? Roman Reigns saying everything we do matters, the camera angle for The Rock making it look like he's pointing at Roman, throwing up the L instead of a 1. All that could just be coincidental, incidental, unplanned, right? Just like the We Want Cody stuff, all unplanned, all just out of the blue. No one figured this would have happened, and it could well be. And at this point, it doesn't even matter if it was planned or not. Now it's just the ride. Now the twists and turns, the ups and downs are just the ride, and it's so much fun. It's so enjoyable. I think, personally, that this is going to be the best story that they tell. Better than the Sami Zayn story, better than the rest of the Bloodline story going back with Drew McIntyre, going back to Edge and Daniel Bryan. I think this is going to be the best storytelling because I think they can tell, they can sense that they're on the verge, that pro wrestling, WWE, is on the verge of an unprecedented era of pro wrestling. And why? Because other major sports just aren't on that top level anymore. We just got done with the All-Star weekend for professional basketball, the NBA. And to me personally, it felt like a dud of a weekend. Skill challenge sucked. The rookie game was probably the best part of it. All-Star game, none of the players ever care about it. Right? So one of the biggest events in sports, the All-Star weekend for pro basketball, was a complete dud and has been for quite a while. We just got finished with the Super Bowl. Football is always going to be super popular. Soccer's not that popular in America, even though it's mega popular across the world. Baseball hasn't been relevant for a couple decades. Professional wrestling has this really cool opportunity, really rare opportunity, where it can take one of those top 2 to 3 spots in sports entertainment for eyeballs. So I'm really excited to see how they capitalize on the momentum of this story going forward. It's exciting, it's fun, it's unpredictable, and I'm really enjoying it. And go ahead and leave in the comments if you're enjoying this Bloodline story for this year so far. I think the twists and turns have been a lot of fun. Going on to the rest of the show, opened the show with a match, another qualifier for the Elimination Chamber. Kevin Owens versus Dirty Dominic Mysterio. This was a really, really good opener. Dominic Mysterio continues to just impress me and entertain the heck out of me with his in-ring work and how good he is at just being hateable. He walks out to a chorus of boos. The minute he tries to get on the mic and say that the Judgment Day is going to win all the titles, that he's going to win this match against Kevin Owens and go to the Elimination Chamber and win the Elimination Chamber to complete the sweep, just gets booed the entire time, drowned out with boos. And you figure by this point, some of those boos would be lessened. Still as loud as they were at the start. So really good match. Kevin Owens wins after R-Truth comes down to the ringside and distracts Dominic Mysterio. Dominic Mysterio tells R-Truth that he's now a part of the Judgment Day and get a chair to help take out Kevin Owens. R-Truth grabs a chair but sits in it and just looks at Dominic Mysterio, says, you should probably look in the ring behind you, and there's Kevin Owens to deliver pop-up powerbomb for the 1-2-3. Kevin Owens is going to the Elimination Chamber. One thing with this match, and several of the matches before that I've been pleasantly surprised by, is that there haven't been a ton of screwy finishes. AJ and Dominic Mysterio have really been the only two screwy finishes in this entire qualifying tournament. And I've really appreciated that just because it makes like these matches so unpredictable, and you get full matches with, some matchups we haven't really gotten before, right? That AJ Styles versus Drew McIntyre matchup we haven't really seen a ton before. Bobby Lashley versus Bronson Reed, Ivar versus LA Knight. Those have been really, really good matchups. So let's jump to the next qualifying match for the men's Elimination Chamber. Jumping a little bit out of order of the show, but Logan Paul versus The Miz. Another really, really good match. For me, the best match of tonight on SmackDown. Logan Paul, we get a free Logan Paul match on free television with The Miz. Logan wins with a knockout punch to The Miz. Tries to use the brass knuckles. Miz gets ahead of it, still catches a knockout punch, and Logan Paul gets the 1-2-3. So all of our finalists for the Elimination Chamber are Drew McIntyre, LA Knight, Bobby Lashley, Logan Paul, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton. A just absolutely star-studded Elimination Chamber. And for me, this is how Elimination Chamber should always be. Your biggest names should be in this big match, right? If we're going to have an entire pay-per-view surrounding this particular match type, the Elimination Chamber, all your biggest stars should be in the Elimination Chamber. And if you look at those 6 names, I mean, what else could you really ask for? Right? Those are the biggest names in the company right now that aren't champions. So really, really excited for the Elimination Chamber next Saturday. In the backstage, we get a segment with Drew McIntyre and LA Knight. Drew McIntyre says that he's going to save the World Heavyweight Championship after he wins the Elimination Chamber and beats Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. Drew then goes on to complain that his moment was stolen by Solo Sikoa and the Bloodline earlier before, and then by Damian Priest, of course, against Seth Rollins. LA Knight then interrupts and tells Drew McIntyre that your moment can get stolen one more time after LA Knight wins the Elimination Chamber. LA Knight then says that he pulls out Drew McIntyre's new shirt with the tombstone on it and CM Punk's name on the tombstone. LA Knight says that there's room for DM Punk's name and goals for WrestleMania to go on that tombstone as well. They get very angry with each other, jaw-jack with each other, get separated, and a match for next Friday night on SmackDown is set up before Elimination Chamber. Looking forward to that match. Loving the intensity from all the participants in the Elimination Chamber. This segment just heightens how important a spot on the WrestleMania card. And remember, I talked about this last week, that one thing I've been enjoying with the Sami Zayn story and with all these other stories throughout WrestleMania season has been the urgency, the importance placed on being on a WrestleMania card, right? And so I'm enjoying that urgency just permeating throughout everybody's storyline, men and women. It's been a lot of fun to watch. Next match, another qualifying match for the Elimination Chamber. This time for the women's side of the Elimination Chamber. Tiffany Stratton versus Zelina Vega. Pretty straightforward match. Tiffany Stratton gets the W with the prettiest moonsault ever. beating Zelina Vega after Zelina Vega gets distracted and gets a little tied up with the rest of Legado del Fantasma, who's sitting in ringside in the first row, right next to the announce booth. Zelina Vega goes and gets distracted, comes back in the ring and gets beaten up by Tiffany Stratton, who, newest member on the SmackDown roster, is thrown right into the Elimination Chamber. Big moment for Tiffany Stratton. Very excited to see what she's going to do in the Elimination Chamber. Next up, another backstage segment. One of my favorite moments of the night, personally. Probably wasn't the best moment of the night. I definitely think that the best moment was the Bloodline segment. But for me personally, the club backstage, AJ Styles sulking, brooding in the locker room, kind of huddled up in one of the dressing lockers. Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, and Michin all come over. Luke Gallows asks AJ to talk to him, tell him what's wrong. Michin says that AJ hasn't been calling them, hasn't been answering any of their texts. And Carl Anderson, who, moment he walks in, looks absolutely fed up with AJ Styles, tells the Michin and Luke Gallows, don't know why you guys care, don't know why we're wasting our time, because AJ seems to have forgotten where he's come from. This upsets AJ Styles, who shoots up, mushes Carl Anderson in the face. Carl Anderson pushes AJ back. Then AJ hits Carl Anderson with a slap. Carl then just mean mugs AJ, puts his finger in his face, tells AJ Styles if it had been anyone else, and then AJ Styles, before Carl Anderson can say anything, says, is that what's holding you back, Carl? And then AJ immediately leaves the locker room, leaving Carl Anderson fuming in the locker room with Michin and Luke Gallows. Loved this segment for a couple of reasons, right? We've seen this turn from AJ, who's, right, kind of done this quasi-lone wolf thing, but hasn't, outright abandoned the OC. Hasn't said, I'm not with you guys, but has just kind of been upset with them for whatever reason. And now we get kind of a clearer vision of why AJ seems to be upset with Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, and Michin. It's because they're not as serious about this whole moving up the card thing like AJ Styles is. Right? AJ Styles is willing to beat up anybody, willing to do anything, willing to go out on his own without the club to try and win a world championship. He doesn't, right? But Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, and Michin are all just happy to be there. It seems like, right? Michin definitely is in that place. She just wants AJ Styles to be around the group again. And AJ Styles is trying to get them to get that seriousness back to them, to get that killer instinct back into them. And so that's at least what I'm seeing in this story. And I hope we continue down this journey of the OC, Carl Anderson, and Luke Gallows and Michin getting that killer instinct back in their team, because I think that's going to make them the most intriguing, especially Carl Anderson. To me, Carl Anderson has always been the most interesting when he's the tough guy, right? Luke Gallows is obviously the biggest of the group, but Carl Anderson to me seems like the toughest of the group. And so when Carl Anderson gets back to just punching people in the face, beating them up, pinning them 1, 2, 3, and being the best tag team in the world, I think we're going to really see the best of the OC to come. Moving forward with the show, we had a tag match, Authors of Pain versus two NXT stars who are making their debut on SmackDown, Javier Bernal and Bo Morris. This was a squash match. AOP get the squash win. Clothesline Javier, toss Bo into the ring, hit the Super Collider, power bombs, then hit a neckbreaker power bomb for the 1, 2, 3 on Javier Bernal. So very simple match. But what I did like about this match, and what I did like about potentially what WWE might do going forward, is using unused NXT superstars in this sort of squash role rather than local talent. And for one reason, right, the whole point of NXT, this newer version of NXT, right, is to get them absolutely as best prepared for WWE's main roster, right, for SmackDown, for Raw. And what better way to do that than what they've been doing with guys like Braun Breaker, guys like Carmelo Hayes, what they did with Grayson Waller back a couple years ago. But the best way to do that is by putting them on those shows, right? Javier Bernal, for me, is someone I think we're going to be seeing on main roster at some point. On NXT, NXT using them regularly on their show. But eventually, I think Javier Bernal is a guy that is going to be on main roster, going to be a fixture of the week-to-week for either Raw or SmackDown. He may not be the biggest star that they have, but I think he's going to play a similar to Cameron Grimes role on one of those shows, and it's the best way to help build these guys up is by putting them on the show, putting them with more experienced talent. So I like that sort of plan going forward, and I hope they do that more going forward, because again, it puts these guys' names out there more than just local talent where you'll see them one week, squash them, and that's that. So get more use out of them by putting named superstars against veterans like Authors of Pain and the Final Testament. But that was a quick match. Good for the Authors of Pain to get a quick W. Next week, we're getting the Authors of Pain versus the Street Profits, their first official debut with SmackDown talent. Backstage, we had a video package with Damage Control, Io Sky, Kairi Sane, and Asuka calling out Bayley and Dakota Kai, calling Bayley an idiot, and saying, Dakota Kai, if you align yourself with Bayley, you're an idiot too, and we'll take you out. So I like this new version of Damage Control. Kind of hope they change their name from Damage Control, but because I think Damage Control is more about Bayley than Io and Asuka and Kairi. But that's their choice. That's kind of a nitpicking thing. Next up, we had a match, another qualifying match between Naomi and Alba Fire. Naomi gets the big win with the submission. Looked really good against this match. Happy for Alba Fire getting more shine on SmackDown, even though she lost to Naomi. It's no shame in losing to Naomi. Naomi's new returning superstar, so obviously you're going to get the win. Happy to see Naomi back in a big spot on the Elimination Chamber card. But we do have one spot remaining that'll get determined on Monday Night Raw, I believe. So far, we have Tiffany Stratton, Becky Lynch, Naomi, Liv Morgan, and Bianca Belair as qualifying contenders for the Elimination Chamber. So, already, again, like the men, stacked Elimination Chamber, big names in there, like an Elimination Chamber should have. Going forward, we had a backstage segment with Bayley and Dakota Kai. Dakota Kai reacting to the Damage Control call-out segment. Dakota runs up to Bayley asking for help, begging Bayley for help. Bayley not interested in anything that Dakota has to offer. Smart move, Bayley, because you don't ever trust snakes. Dakota's still asking for help, though, begging, and Bayley just says, nah, you're on your own. But we'll see how this goes forward. I imagine Dakota Kai's going to somehow earn Bayley's trust and, like snakes do, eventually stab Bayley in the back, because snakes are going to do snake things. Last bit of the show, right before the Bloodline segment, our new signee, SmackDown's big signing. So all throughout the show, we had this Nick Aldis showing around two superstars that haven't been signed anywhere, two free agents, Braun Breaker and Jade Cargill. With them was Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair, just to help kind of show them around, be two stars, try and entice these two free agent stars to SmackDown. During one of the matches, you could see Nick Aldis talking with Braun Breaker, talking with Jade in one of the skyboxes. Then in a different segment, you had, after the Tiffany Stratton match, Jade and Braun Breaker with Nick Aldis in his office. Tiffany barged in to yell at Bianca Belair and Liv Morgan. Jade Cargill got upset with Tiffany Stratton. And you can tell that Jade really took issue that someone interrupted this important moment for her, and she kind of tossed her contract like she didn't want to sign it. Braun Breaker, though, took the contract, gave it to Nick Aldis, and walked off with Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis comes out right before that Bloodline segment, and Nick Aldis then says, our newest signing to SmackDown, Braun Breaker. I'm excited for this signing. This is probably one of the most exciting signings for me, because Braun Breaker is, to me, the future of this company. I think there was a segment, I believe, last week where last week or on Monday Night Raw, where Braun Breaker and Paul Heyman were in the same room together, and you could basically just see Paul Heyman salivating over Braun Breaker. Probably like he was salivating over Brock Lesnar when he first saw Brock. And so this pairing between Paul and Braun seems like a match made in heaven. All these stars on SmackDown, Roman, LA Knight, Kevin Owens, Braun Breaker has a wealth of opportunity to just shine on this roster. And so I'm very excited for Braun Breaker on SmackDown. Best spear in the business, one of the best young stars on the roster, and very excited for him, very excited for what he's going to do on SmackDown. But that leads us to the end of the show. Great episode of SmackDown. Lots happened. Best part of WrestleMania season is they never have empty shows anymore. Never have empty plans, and that's the most fun part of Monday Night Raw and Friday Night Smackdown. So if you stuck around to the end of Let's Talk Wrestling, I really appreciate it. I appreciate every view that we get on this channel. Thank you for watching. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notify button so you don't miss any new content, whether it's Let's Talk Wrestling or any of the Let's Talk Gratitude main content. Otherwise, hope you all have a great week, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye, guys.